Okay.
It's not number 11, is it?
He was the one that are not censored.
Do we have a phone number? So. You know how to locate people here.
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna give Christina the name and
Okay,
then
let's
they're gonna
start
call
with
him.
that. Oh yeah, she's impressive. Yeah, yeah. She got up at the beginning of Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. We are on the record to begin day 2. We're in the presence of the jury. Mr. Bahena is present along with the attorneys of record. Prior to the state calling their first witness this morning, do we have further record we need to make regarding exhibits?
We do, Judge. As you know, we've provided both the court and the defense with a copy of our exhibit list. And yesterday we moved in several exhibits. At this time, we would move in by agreement exhibits 11. Well, let me just do it this way. We'll move in a total of exhibits 1 through 52 inclusive. I know some of those have already been admitted, but just for ease of the record here. By agreement, we would offer now state's exhibits 1 through 52 inclusive that are on our list. I talked to Mr. Freeze prior to starting court this morning, and I believe that he is in agreement to stipulate to those at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Freeze, 1 through 52 of the state, is that agreeable?
It is.
At this point in time, state's exhibits 1 through 52 are admitted into evidence. With that then, the state may call its next witness.
The state calls Deputy Steve Kibby.
Mr. Kibby, can you step over here real quick? I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Okay. Go ahead and be seated over there if you would.
Don't get too close. Speak up.
Mr. Claver, you may proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you state and spell your name, please?
Steve Kibby, K-I-V as in Victor I,
And who is your employer?
Powashik County Sheriff's Office.
And what do you do for the Sheriff's Office?
I'm a deputy sheriff currently assigned to investigations.
How long have you held that position?
I've been with Powashik County for over 16 years, and I've been assigned as an investigator for over 8.
And do you have other law enforcement experience?
Yes, I was a police officer in Iowa City for 8 years.
And can you describe your training and experience as it pertains to law enforcement?
I graduated in 1996 from Indian Hills Community College with an associate degree in criminal justice and a bachelor's degree in political science. January of 1997, I was hired by the Iowa City Police Department. Began the academy a few days later, graduated in April, went through the field training process, completed that successfully, and for the next 7.5 years, worked in the patrol division.
Are you a certified peace officer in the state of Iowa?
Yes.
And Deputy Kibby, on July 19th, 2018, did you receive a call about a missing person?
Yes.
Can you describe that call, please?
Sheriff Kriegel called me at home. It was about 9:30 p.m. and told me that a 20-year-old female from Brooklyn named Mollie Tibbetts had been missing, and that Deputy Matt Simpson had been following up on that and investigating for the last few hours.
And what did you do in response to that call?
I went down to the sheriff's office and with intentions of trying to locate the phone or do something, but after talking to Deputy Simpson, that had already been done unsuccessfully. I was told that a search effort had been organized for first thing in the morning, and that I was supposed to start working on this the very next morning.
When you talk about the phone, what exactly are you referring to?
We were going to. I thought we could ping the phone, try to locate the phone in an effort to find Mollie.
And whose phone were you?
Mollie
trying to
Tibbetts.
locate? Do you know where Mollie Tibbetts was staying on the evening of July 18th?
Yes, she was staying at 622 West Des Moines Street in Brooklyn.
And whose residence was that?
That's the residence of Blake and Allie Jack, and Dalton Jack, Mollie's boyfriend, would stay there at that residence also when he was in town, when he wasn't on the road working.
Did you go to that residence at any point in time?
Yes. The next day, which would have been July 20th, the first thing I did is went to the sheriff's office and tried to start organizing this investigation, gathering as much information. I knew that search efforts were being organized in Brooklyn. So I was at the sheriff's office for, I don't know, a short time. And then maybe around 9:30 or 10 in the morning, I went to 622 West Des Moines, where I met DCI agent Trent Valletta.
And you're the investigator for the Powashik County Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
And so would you be the person responsible for heading this search when it initially began?
Somewhat. The Friday kind of turned into, I mean, we had search effort, and then we had kind of an investigation angle to it too. I was more involved in like interviewing like Blake and Allie and Trent Valletta, and I walked through the home. I did end up searching though.
Did you find anything of interest during that search?
Not that morning, no.
And during the search of the home, was there any indication found as to where Mollie may have gone?
Well, Deputy Simpson had relayed to me that that Thursday night, the 19th, he had gone through the home at 622 West Des Moines, and he had also talked to Mollie's mother, Laura, and he had gone to their house at 114 Bear Drive in Brooklyn, and they noticed that her running shoes were gone, and that Blake had also told Matt Simpson that the dogs were in the basement. So those two things together indicated that she had probably gone for a run.
And did you learn during the course of your investigation Mollie's routine concerning her runs?
Yes.
And what did you learn?
We learned that she liked to jog at night or in the evening, late afternoon, and that her routes would vary, but that one of her routes would be 385th Avenue that runs east out of Brooklyn.
And Deputy Kibby, were there any other agencies involved in the investigation or search for Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes. The very first day, the July 20th, we had several law enforcement agencies. Our agency, we had assistance from Jasper County, State Patrol, DCI. I'm probably missing somebody, but we also had numerous volunteer firefighters, community members who were out searching road ditches, rural areas, fields.
Deputy Kibby, can you tell me what a canvas is?
Yeah, canvas is I guess it'd be an investigative technique that we employed during this time, where we basically went door to door, and I believe every residence in Brooklyn, trying to ascertain who lives there, who might have been visiting at the time that we believe she disappeared, any vehicles associated with the residence, and any video that they might have.
Is that something that was expanded beyond the city limits?
Yes. That technique was law enforcement related. We had other people searching fields and volunteers searching fields, but we also went door to door to farm residences, rural residences, and we focused our search effort in the rural areas. I would say basically in the I would say generally the southeastern quarter of our county.
Can you tell me approximately how long that process lasted?
At least a month.
Did you discover any evidence indicating where Mollie may have gone during the course of your canvass?
We had some initial information regarding her cell phone that led us to focus our efforts in that area.
Deputy, what was the significance to the search on the southeast part of the county?
We had information from an FBI analyst who did some research on her cell phone that led us to believe that the last location of her cell phone was in that area.
Of Mollie Tibbetts' cell
Yes.
phone? During the course of the investigation, was any surveillance video obtained?
Yes.
And from what sources was that obtained?
We had video from numerous sources. The one that was useful to us came from 616 West Des Moines Street, a residence in Brooklyn.
Whose residence was that?
Logan Collins.
What was significant about that video?
We had a team of law enforcement officers reviewing video from all kinds of places. In that particular video, the officers reviewing that picked up on a black Chevy Malibu that was seen in that area. And I'll back up a little bit. 616 East Des Moines Street. It's kind of on the eastern side of Brooklyn. And we believe that Mollie Tibbetts had been jogging in that area, and through their review of that video, they were able to ascertain that particular vehicle would have had to have been in the area when Mollie Tibbetts was jogging through, and most likely would have seen her. He was just kind of driving around.
Were you aware of Christina Stewart's report of seeing Mollie?
Yes.
And is that how you knew the general location of Mollie's run?
Yes.
And I want to clarify one thing, Deputy Kibby. On Logan Collins' residence, was that on East Des Moines Street?
Yes. Did I say west?
You
Sorry.
did.
Yeah, east.
Did you actually view that video from Collins' residence?
Some of it. I didn't review the whole thing. I saw the pertinent clips, but I didn't see the whole thing.
And what were the pertinent clips?
Of the vehicle traveling around that area, circling around, just kind of lingering in the area for a while.
You saw the vehicle on the video?
Yes.
Can you describe the vehicle for me, please?
It was a black Chevy Malibu. Initially, when that information was passed on from the officers reviewing the video, it was described as a black Chevy Malibu, model year 2008 to 2012, with chrome mirror covers and chrome door handles. So that's kind of what we were looking for. I remember seeing the clips. I don't think it was until the next day or later that I saw the clips, but that's the kind of vehicle that I was looking for.
Do you recall the date that the vehicle, the Chevy Malibu, was identified as a vehicle of interest?
Yes.
When was that date?
August 16th. Or I'm sorry, it was identified on video August 15th,
And when did you learn about the vehicle?
that day.
I want to direct your attention to the following day, August 16th, 2018. And on that date, did you encounter a black Chevy Malibu?
Yes.
Can you describe that encounter for me?
Yeah, I was driving north on Highway 63 in my county vehicle. It was a dark blue Dodge Durango. I was driving north on Highway 63, and I was going underneath the Interstate 80 overpass. And as I went under the overpass, I saw a black Chevy Malibu with chrome mirror covers at the stop sign at the westbound off-ramp. And it caught my eye, and I drove past it, and then I pulled over on the shoulder to see where it was going to go because I wanted to identify that vehicle and driver.
And had you been looking for black Chevy Malibus at that point?
Yes.
Did you follow the vehicle?
I did. The vehicle turned north onto Highway 63, so it would have driven past me, and I caught the license plate as it did. I ran it through our dispatch center, and I began to follow the Malibu north on Highway 63. I learned that the vehicle was registered to a female from Tama, and as we drove into Malcolm, which is less than a mile from Interstate 80, the vehicle turned west onto 2nd Street, and so I followed it, and then it turned north into an alley, and I lost sight of it for a second, but as I turned north into the alley, I saw that it was parked, so I parked in the alley, I got out, and the driver was already out of the vehicle, so I said, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And he turned around, and I tried to communicate with him. It became pretty obvious quickly that he didn't speak English, but there happened to be some older gentleman in a yard nearby that walked over and said he could help us communicate.
And Deputy Kibby, you said you ran the plate of that vehicle. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall what that license plate number was?
Yes. It was, D. David, K. King, P. Paul, 055.
And the registered owner of that vehicle, was that Arlie Lorenzana?
Yes.
Were you able to identify the driver of the Malibu?
Yes. I asked him if he had any identification. He showed me a document as a birth certificate that gave his name as Cristhian Bahena Rivera and his birth date. I asked him, is this you? And he said yes.
Did you see the driver of that vehicle in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Where's he sitting?
I was at the defendant table with looks like a light blue button-down collared shirt and the headphones on.
Were you able to find any other information, find out any other information about the defendant when you spoke with him that day?
Yes. I asked him where he worked. He told me he worked at Yerraby Farms and had for about the past 4 years. He gave me a cell phone number. I asked him how often he goes into Brooklyn. He goes in occasionally. He said he has some friends in town that he goes to visit sometimes. He gave me his what would be his common route from his residence to town. And when I first asked him what his address was, he said it was, I believe, it's 1840 400th Avenue, which would be Yerraby Farms where he works. Later, we would learn that he lived on a property owned by Yerraby Farms, but it was on 200th, I think 21, 41 something, 200th. So when he tried to describe to me, he said, I take the gravel to the pavement. So when I was imagining him leaving Yerraby Farms, I thought, well, he must take like 190th to Old 6 as a pavement and into Brooklyn. But later, when we realized that he actually lived at a different location on 200th, it made more sense to me when he said I take the gravel to the pavement that he would take 200th Street north to 385th and go into town on 385th, which is paved all the way from Brooklyn to 200th.
Deputy Kibby,
If that makes sense.
And 385th was the road that Mollie was last seen on, is that right?
Yes.
What is Yerraby Farms?
It's a dairy farm just outside of Brooklyn, a few miles.
Are you familiar with its location?
Yes.
Deputy Kibby, I'd like to show you Exhibit 2. It should pop up on the screen in front of you in a moment. Are you familiar with this map?
Yes.
And what is
That's
this?
a map of Powashik County.
And could you describe where Yerraby Farms is located on this map?
Yeah, roughly, let's see. Yerby Farms would be located right about where that arrow is, actually, roughly.
That arrow is an accurate depiction
Yeah.
of where Yerby
Yes.
Farms is? Did you take photographs during your encounter
Yes,
with the driver?
yes.
And what photographs did you take?
I took one of Mr. Rivera, and I took a few of his car.
I'd like to direct your attention to Exhibit 22. Are you familiar with this image?
Yes, I took that picture.
And what's depicted?
That's the vehicle that I encountered in Malcolm.
The vehicle that caught your attention?
Yes,
Driven by Mr. Cristhian Bahena Rivera?
yes.
When did you take that picture?
August 16th.
Sorry to keep interrupting you, but it's that. Where was the picture taken?
In Malcolm, I believe it was to the rear of 205 Clay Street in Malcolm, in an alley behind the residence.
I'd like to move to Exhibit 23. What is this picture?
It's a picture of Mr. Rivera.
Did you take that picture?
Yes,
When did you take it?
that day, August 16th.
And where was it taken?
Same location.
Same time?
Yes.
And Deputy Kibby, I've got a couple more exhibits for you. I'd like to move to 38 and 39. Are you familiar with this image?
Yes.
What is it?
That's a picture of the same car, and that's in our Sally Port at the sheriff's office in the garage area.
And does this photograph capture the license plate of that vehicle?
Yes,
Is it the same license plate number that you encountered on August 16th, 2018?
yes.
I'd like to move to 40 and 41. What is depicted in these images?
The same car in our Sally Port garage area.
And are there any distinguishing features captured in this image?
I would say the chrome mirror covers and the chrome door handles and the license plate.
Is this the same car you encountered on August 16th, 2018?
Yes.
Then I'd like to move to Exhibit 42. And what is this, Deputy Kibby?
It's a kind of a closer up picture of the same car. Appears to be focused on the chrome mirror.
Did you ask the defendant about Mollie Tibbetts when you
Yeah.
encountered him on August 16th?
Yes.
And what was his response?
He said he had heard that there was a girl missing from Brooklyn, but didn't have any knowledge that would be useful to us.
Deputy Kibby, what were you wearing on August 16th, 2018 when you encountered the defendant?
I was wearing a black short sleeve polo with a gold Powashik County Sheriff Star sewn onto it, khaki pants with the sidearm and my badge affixed to my belt, and black boots.
Was it apparent that you were a law enforcement officer by your dress?
I would assume so.
Did you identify yourself to the defendant as a law enforcement officer?
I did. I said my name is Steve Kibby. I'm with the Powashik County Sheriff's Office.
Did you make an arrest at that point?
No.
And how did you end the encounter with the defendant?
Probably just said thanks for your time, and he walked off, and I got in my car.
Did you do anything subsequent to that encounter? Report it to anyone, anything of that nature?
I did.
What did you do?
I made a phone call. I don't remember who it was to. Told him about the encounter. I don't remember if I sent the pictures that day. I remember showing pictures to people the next day.
Thank you, Deputy. I have no further questions for you at this time.
Defense may cross-examine.
Deputy Kibby, I kind of want to work backwards. We'll start with the interaction with Mr. Bahena on the 16th, right? When you talked to him that day, describe his demeanor, please.
He seemed calm and not nervous, and
He was polite.
yes,
He answered all your questions.
he did.
Produced all information you requested of him.
He did.
Did you get the opportunity to look about his car and see if you could find anything of evidentiary value?
I didn't actually search his car. I looked inside through the windows while he was in his glove box getting his document that he produced.
Did you notice anything unusual about the inside of his car?
No.
Okay. And he told you where he worked and he told you where he lived, correct?
Yes.
Up to that point, on August 16th, where he told you where he worked and told you where he lived, had you received any information concerning those locations being suspicious in the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
As far as, I'm sorry, where he worked, you said?
Yes. Had you received any tips or any intelligence that Mollie Tibbetts may have been abducted by an individual named Cristhian Bahena?
No.
Had you received any tips or intelligence that the likely suspect was Hispanic?
No.
You were involved in this investigation every day, correct?
Yes.
Were there briefings every day?
Yes.
And were you involved in briefings with both the DCI and the FBI?
Yes.
And the FBI utilized vast resources, didn't they?
Yes.
That included agents from Washington, D.C., right?
Yes.
And some of these agents were agents from the Behavioral Analysis Unit, right?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Did any of these briefings that you were involved in include briefings from the FBI as to what kind of individual you're likely looking for?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. The southeast corner of the county, define that for me.
Very rural.
Very rural?
Very rural, yeah.
Okay, but what would be draw me a mental picture. Where's the top end, where's the bottom end, and the east and west corners?
We can pull that map up, I could show you, or you just want me to describe it to you?
Just describe it to me.
Powashik County is very rural. Interstate 80 goes east and west right through the middle of the county. Brooklyn is right along Interstate 80, maybe just to the east of Center. So I would say, I mean, if you go straight south of Brooklyn, if you can imagine that southeastern quadrant, Interstate 80 runs right through there. Highway 21 runs straight south from Interstate 80. I would say right straight through that quadrant, basically. There's a couple little towns down there, Deep River and Guernsey. I guess, does that answer your question?
So you're looking in the Deep River Guernsey area?
Yeah, in that area, in that kind of cone shape, I guess.
Is that the area where Mollie was ultimately found?
Yes.
And the reason that area was focused on was because that was where her cell phone last pinged, right?
That was where kind of a technical term. That's where we were told that there was that the phone powered off, or that was the last known location of the phone.
Okay. And that's what led you to an individual named Wayne Cheney,
Yes,
because his home was near there.
yes.
And Mr. Cheney, did you canvass or search his area?
Yes.
And what was the connection or the attraction to Mr. Cheney as someone of interest?
Basically, Wayne Cheney lived in the area, or does as far as I know still. He'd had a kind of history of no contact order violations, just kind of a reputation as being a little different around women, I guess, to put it. All we knew in those first days were that was where her phone was. We didn't have anything solid leading to anybody. We were.
Did you or any other law enforcement, to your knowledge, have any tips regarding Wayne Cheney and his involvement in this investigation?
That's possible, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Would you agree with me that if there were a tip involving someone who had a history of violence against women, or perhaps being sexually deviant in that quadrant of the county, that'd be something law enforcement would want to follow up on?
Yes.
And tell me why that is.
Well, we had a missing 20-year-old under suspicious circumstances. Unlike her, we also learned through that FBI phone analysis that she was jogging and eyewitness accounts that she had been jogging on 385th Avenue. She had her phone with her. There was some kind of what they called event at a certain point along 385th Avenue, and all of a sudden her phone is traveling like 55 or 60 miles an hour south down a gravel road, and then it just shuts off in the middle of nowhere.
Wait, excuse me, Wayne Cheney lived on 470th Avenue, correct?
Yes,
And Mollie's body was found on 460th Avenue, correct?
yes,
So basically, Wayne Cheney lived about a mile south of where Mollie's body was found, and perhaps I think a little bit to the west, right?
yes, that's right.
Now, were you involved in any canvassing of 460th Avenue?
Yes,
Did you talk to the residents up and down 460th Avenue?
yes.
Did you talk to anybody who resided in the 2400 block of 460th Avenue?
I don't believe I did. I don't. Somebody probably did, but I don't recall going that far personally.
Would it be important in your training, education, and experience to talk to the people who lived immediately in the area where Mollie's body was found?
Yes.
And why is that?
I'm sorry?
Why is that?
Well, we would want to know if they saw anything or had any information that would be useful. Saw anything suspicious around that time?
Do you know whose property Mollie's body was found on?
I believe the last name is Bear.
Okay. Do you know who owns the property immediately adjacent to the west of Mollie's body?
I don't.
If I gave you the name Ron Pexa, would that jog your memory?
Immediately to the west?
Correct.
Yes, I did go there. I remember talking to him.
You did talk to Ron Pexa.
Yes.
And why did you talk to Mr. Pexa?
I believe we had some information come in about him. I don't recall specifically what it was. I went there with a couple of other agents and we talked to him for, I don't know, a half hour.
Was that recorded?
Not that I know of.
Was a report made of that?
Not by me.
Did Mr. Pexa tell you he was a law enforcement officer?
Yes. Or retired or part-time or I don't remember.
And the information you received about Mr. Pexa, please tell me what it was.
I don't remember where it came from. I don't remember.
Did the report involve him being sexually violent in the past?
It could have. I don't really remember.
Was this before or after Mollie was found dead?
That was before.
Okay. And he lived approximately less than a quarter mile from where her body was found?
I'm not sure about the distance, but nearby.
If his address is 2410 460th Avenue,
That sounds about right.
that's about where her body would have been found.
Yeah, that
right?
could be accurate, yeah.
And if Mr. Pexa, I'm assuming that if he had a history of violence against women, that's something you would have followed up on?
Yes.
You recall who the agents were you went there with?
I think it was Agent Valletta from the DCI, and I think Agent Patras from the FBI.
Okay. And you'd agree with me that an investigation of this magnitude, that something as important as investigating and talking to someone who has the allegations against them, like Mr. Pexa, those would be documented, when you think?
I would think. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't.
You weren't the investigating officer, so you necessarily wouldn't do it, right?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I don't think I had anything on Mr. Pexa.
Okay. But you had a lot on Mr. Cheney.
Not really. I mean, he was interviewed at least once that I know of, and I know he was looked at very closely.
Okay. He was
Very
interviewed.
closely. He was looked at
Right.
and eventually cleared.
Okay. He was interviewed at least twice, right?
I think so.
His property was searched, right?
I believe so.
And to your recollection, Ron Pexa, his property wasn't searched, was it?
I believe we did.
And you can tell me what that property search entailed?
We were in his house. We walked through some outbuildings.
Was that quarter-mile stretch between where Mollie's body was ultimately found and Mr. Pexa's house, was that searched by volunteers?
It could have been. I know we didn't do it that day.
Was Mr. Pexa ever brought into the fire department and officially interviewed?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Do you know if he denied any type of sexual deviance or violence against women?
I don't remember him being asked that specifically, but it's possible.
Okay. In response to Mr. Claver's question, you seem to opine that where Mr. Bahena was living, he would have traveled north on 200th Street and then went in 385th to get to Brooklyn, right?
Right.
200th Street, if I understand it correctly, goes straight north, correct?
Yes.
And as you go straight north a couple miles, well, first of all, is it north or south of Interstate 80?
His residence?
Yes.
Just north.
You go north on 200th Street. He told you he gets to the blacktop and then turns, right?
Right. Correct.
Yeah, so you turn left actually to get to
Right.
Brooklyn.
Correct.
So 385th is not the first blacktop you hit, right?
No.
So you hit Old Highway 6 first.
Right.
You take
Yes.
Highway 6 left, and that takes you into Brooklyn too.
Yes, it could.
So he never clarified whether he took Old Highway 6 or kept going north to 385th and took the blacktop, right?
That's right.
So the idea that he shot across Old Highway 6, kept going north, and then took 385th in is mere speculation.
That was my opinion. But
Yeah.
he didn't give me the correct address, his correct address when I asked him the first time either. I only learned of his actual address later.
Okay. And again, he spoke very little English.
Right, that's right.
And was he able to give you anything with his correct address on it?
Not that day I talked to him.
Okay. But he's able to give you the address of where he worked.
That's right.
So your testimony to the jury that he just left out the fact that there was a blacktop he would cross first you just opine that he blew past the first blacktop, went to the second one, which just happens to be the one where Mollie Tibbetts was running, right?
Right, that's what I thought after we realized what his actual address was.
Okay, and that fits the narrative because that's where she was running the day she was,
Certainly a possibility.
yeah. But there's no evidence that you can provide that's what he did.
No.
And when you take Old Highway 6, if the first blacktop, that takes you right into downtown where all the business is done, right?
It takes you to the south end of Brooklyn. You'd have to turn and go into town, but
When you turn to go into town, you go over a little bridge. And
yes,
downtown's right there, right?
that's right.
That's where the grocery store is, right?
That's right.
That's where the gas stations are, right?
Yes,
That's where anything of commerce that you would do is, right?
that's right.
Is that where the trailer park is too?
Yes,
When you come in 385th Street, that's the northern edge of town, right?
midway. Yeah.
That's more of the residential area, right?
Yes.
And did Mr. Bahena tell you that he would go into Brooklyn on the residential side of town?
I don't remember if he said that specifically. I know he told me that he would go, he had friends to visit, or he would go into town occasionally.
On the 20th, as part of your investigation into this case, you also were just gathering information in general, right?
I'm sorry?
On the 20th, part of your job was just gathering as much information as you could, right?
On what date?
The 20th of July.
Yes.
And part of that gathering of information was interviewing Dalton Jack.
Oh, on July 20th, yes, yes.
And was your interview the first real interview that Mr. Jack had to undergo?
I believe he talked to Deputy Simpson the night before.
Okay. But as far as an in-depth type interview, a true interview, not just a fact-gathering interview that Deputy Simpson did, yours was the first one.
Mine was the very next one, yes.
Okay. Now, do you recall the recitation of activities, what Mr. Jack said to you about his activities?
Objection, hearsay.
Can you read the question back, please?
Now, do you recall the recitation of activities, what Mr. Jack said to you about his activity?
Sustained.
As part of collecting information and to further your investigation, you took statements from Mr. Jack, correct?
Yes.
And that was to further your investigation, Deputy Kibby, right? Right?
Yes.
And the statements you took from Mr. Jack were meant to guide you in your next step in the investigation, correct?
Yes.
And did Mr. Jack give you statements that helped guide you in your investigation?
Yes.
What was the purpose in investigating or talking to Mr. Jack?
To gain more information on Mollie Tibbetts, her habits, basically start building what we call a victimology,
What is a victimology?
like just a background, personal history of a victim, habits, preferences, personal characteristics, things of that nature.
Okay. He told you that the night that Mollie was abducted, the 18th, that he was living the hotel life, right?
Yes.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. Go ahead.
He told you he was hanging with friends that night, right?
I don't know if he told me he was hanging with friends. He told me he was at the hotel. He was in Dubuque during that
Okay.
time.
He told you that the next day, the 19th, he was working on the bridge in Dubuque, right?
He was working, yes.
He worked till noon,
Yes.
and they got rained out, right?
Yes.
So he went back to the hotel and he took a nap, right?
Yes.
And that he woke up to a friend calling, asking about where Mollie's whereabouts were, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall saying to Mr. Jack that every little detail that he could give you was important?
Sounds like something I would say, yes.
And why is every little detail at that point important?
Because we don't know what's important and what's not. At that time, it was pretty early.
You asked Mr. Jack to tell you Mollie's run routes. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And he told you very specifically that if Mollie runs 3 miles, that she would start at the school, run down by the Jasper construction shop, over by Manat's, and then back again, right?
I don't remember Manat's. I remember him telling me that it was possible that she could run north on the gravel, 170th Street, that runs from near that West Des Moines residence north. She would run through town. One of the routes could take her by Jasper Construction, and then possibly out 385th. I don't think Manat's was ever mentioned.
But he had recollection, clear recollection of her run routes, right?
Yes.
And it was Mr. Jack on the 20th of July, 2018, who told you her run routes. That's clear.
Yes.
And you asked Mr. Jack about the possibility of Mollie maybe having another guy, right?
Yes.
And that's just a routine question in any missing persons case.
We had nothing to make us believe that. No.
Do you recall Mr. Jack telling you toward the end of the interview that if it helps, he would answer any question, no matter how uncomfortable?
I don't remember him saying that, but it's certainly possible.
Okay. Toward the end of the interview, Mr. Jack mentioned some rumor he heard about some girl in an accident down by Pekin. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did you ever investigate that rumor?
I didn't. I think it was passed on into the our little command post, but I don't remember doing anything with that personally.
And for the record, he told you that he had heard a rumor that some girl and an unknown male had been in a car accident down by the small town of Pekin.
Yes.
And that a third-party male had come upon the accident, and the female had had injuries, right?
That sounds familiar, yes.
And the female looked at the third-party male and said, "I don't know who the other male is with me. Get me out of here."
Objection.
I don't recall that.
Relevance.
Overruled.
Correct?
I don't remember the exact words. I remember asking him, trying to be polite, I remember asking him how that matched up with what we were doing. What he was telling me just didn't really seem, I wasn't making a connection. If I remember correctly, he said he heard a rumor that like a friend of a friend had been in an accident in some town 60 miles south of here. She had been picked up by some guy she didn't know, and they kind of ended there, as I remember.
Okay. Just kind of an albatross of a rumor.
Yeah, there was another piece of information that added to the stack, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. You authored some search warrants in this case, right?
Yes.
And what were those search warrants for?
Oh, I see. I wrote a search warrant for, I'll probably miss some, Google location. I wrote a search warrant for, I think, Mr. Rivera's trailer, his DNA. There was a Nissan Altima involved. I don't know, I think I did 8 or 9. I don't remember exactly all of them.
Did you do a consent search of the Jack residence?
Yes.
Did you notice any firearms?
No. I don't remember seeing any.
You notice any knives?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
Nothing that
involved-
stuck out. I mean, I got
Were you-
knives in my house too.
Were you involved in the investigation of an individual named Andrew Day?
No.
Were you involved in the investigation of a man named Michael Davis?
No.
Were you involved in the investigation of a man named Brandon Roller?
No.
I'm going to butcher this name, but maybe you can help me. He's local.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the investigation of a man named Tim Tibbetts?
I think it's Tomatich.
Tomatich?
Yeah, I think. I'm familiar with that. I didn't follow up on that.
Are you
It
aware
was
that-
followed up on. I didn't personally do it.
Are you aware that these are all individuals who were investigated in connection with the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes.
Were you involved in the investigation of any of the employees of Blattner Energy?
Yes.
And just so the jury knows, Blattner Energy was the company erecting windmills in the Poweshiek County area.
Yes.
And what did that investigation entail?
Blattner Energy at the time had what I guess I would call a big camp, kind of near the interchange of Highway 63 and Interstate 80. That's kind of their operations center. They set up kind of semi-temporarily, but they were there forever. So they had workers coming in from all over the state and all over the region. So as part of our canvassing efforts, we went there, I think twice, and interviewed as many of those employees as we could, or at least identified them.
And the employees of Manatch, there were several of those that were investigated as well?
I think we did a canvass at the Manat's headquarters in Brooklyn. I don't know if anybody was specifically investigated.
How about Brandon Roller?
I know the name, but I didn't personally follow up on that.
But you were aware that he was someone who was investigated?
Yeah, the name's familiar to me for more than this, yeah.
A local sex offender?
I believe so.
And that's why he was investigated?
I assume so.
A Curtis and Keaton Laver?
Yes.
They were also investigated?
Yes.
And why were they investigated?
Let's see, I think Agent Valletta and I talked to them the first day. And I don't know if that came in as a tip. I think we seized a computer from them that was searched, and we interviewed the younger of the Laver, like the son. He was eventually cleared.
Speaking of computers, at the Jack home, when you went there, Mollie had a computer?
Yes.
Was that searched?
Yes, I believe so.
By whom?
I think it was the FBI.
Would it be, in your training, education, and experience, basic investigative techniques to all the information off that computer to see her activities in the days leading up to her disappearance?
Yes.
And if it wasn't, can you think of any reason why not?
I don't know if it was, I guess I don't know. I don't know what was done with the computer exactly. I know it was in my possession at one point. I turned it over to the FBI, and I didn't have anything to do with the computer after that.
If it were your investigation that you were leading, what would you have done with that computer? Would you have had it examined
Yes.
forensically?
Yes.
That's all I have.
State have any redirect?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Deputy Kibby, were you aware of an interview with the defendant that took place subsequent to your encounter with him on August 16th?
Yes.
And when did that interview take place?
It was on August 20th.
And how was the defendant encountered on August 20th, 2018?
We went to his place of employment at Yerraby Farms to do I guess you'd call it a focused canvass, to gain a little more information about him and the car and who else might be associated with him in the car. At the end of that canvass, he was taken to the sheriff's office for an interview.
Did you personally go to Yerraby Farms on August 20th?
I did.
Were there other law enforcement agents that went with you?
Yes.
You know how many?
I don't know the number. There was, I think, myself, maybe one or two other deputies, or DCI agents, Homeland Security, FBI, I think. I couldn't put a number on it. Maybe 12, I don't know.
And were you, or did you have any interaction with the defendant at Yerby Farms?
I identified him as the same gentleman that I saw in Malcolm. I
On
didn't
August
speak with him.
16th?
Yes, I didn't speak with him. I positively identified him.
And were you made aware that an interview with the defendant was taking place?
Yes.
And where were you during that interview?
We had, after Mr. Rivera was transported away, and we left the farm, I don't remember if I went down to the sheriff's office or if I went home. I ended up at home at some point. So at about 9 o'clock that night, our chief deputy, Joel Vanderleest, called me at home and said, hey, they're still down here talking to Mr. Rivera. He has some interesting things to say. You should probably come back here. So I did.
Do you know what time you arrived at the sheriff's office?
It was probably 10.
And when did you leave the sheriff's office then, after you first arrived?
Probably about 4:30 in the morning.
Was that on August 21st?
Yes.
Where did you go once you left the sheriff's office?
We ultimately ended up at a field drive into a cornfield about 400 to 500 feet west of 2478 460th Avenue.
Was anything found at that location?
Yes.
What?
After a search of the cornfield, we found human remains that appeared to be deliberately covered by corn stalks in a cornfield. And those remains were eventually positively identified as Mollie Tibbetts.
Deputy Kibby, I'd like to show you Exhibit 2 again.
Okay.
You see an arrow with an address marked on the image?
Yes,
Does that accurately portray where the body was found?
I believe so.
And I'm going to move the cursor to the location. Can you tell me if that's an accurate spot where the body was found?
So the arrow represents the address?
The cursor. You see the little red
Yeah.
dot?
That's probably about right. I can't see the actual gravel road marker, but that's pretty close.
I'd like to move to Exhibit 24.
Okay.
Are you familiar with this map?
Yes.
And can you describe what it is, please?
It looks like basically the southern half of Powashik County.
Are there markings on that image?
Yes.
And can you tell me the significance of the markings?
The little red pin marker looks like it represents 2478 460th Avenue, which looks like it's that yellow line, that horizontal yellow line. And the body location arrow shows about where actually the little red cursor shows about where the body would have been found.
The road that runs north and south directly to the red pin, do you see that?
Yes.
What road is that? Do
The
you know?
Powashik, Iowa Road.
Is that the county line?
Yes.
Mr. Claver, let me just for clarification purposes just inquire. You had referenced Exhibit 24 and we're looking at Exhibit 3. Can you clarify that?
Yes, Your Honor. had misspoken. I meant Exhibit 3,
Okay.
which is what's pulled up on the screen.
And that clarifies it. Thank you.
Deputy Kibby, when you left the sheriff's office, did you drive to the cornfield at 2478 460th Avenue?
Yes,
Was anyone else in the vehicle with you?
yes.
Who was that?
I was driving. Officer Pamela Romero from the Iowa City Police Department was in the front seat. Mr. Rivera was in the back seat behind me, and Agent Potratz from the FBI was in the back seat with Mr. Rivera.
Was it dark at that time?
Yes,
Do you recall the approximate time you arrived at the cornfield?
it was 5 or a little after 5 a.m.
Did any other law enforcement officers travel to the cornfield off of 460th Avenue?
Yes.
Do you know who that was?
Sheriff Kriegel, Agent Valletta, Chief Deputy Vanderleest, and Sergeant Jeff Fink from the Iowa City Police Department.
Were you the first officer to discover the body?
No,
Do you know who was?
I believe Agent Potratz was.
From the time the defendant was transported to the sheriff's office on August 20th, 2018, to the time that the body was discovered on August 21st, 2018, were you aware of any other individuals that law enforcement interviewed during that time span,
No.
other than the defendant?
No.
Were you aware of any admissions that the defendant made when he was at the cornfield off of 460th Avenue?
Yes.
You were asked on cross-examination about several names that you encountered during the investigation. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Specifically, you were asked about a Wayne Cheney.
Yes.
Was any physical evidence associated with Mollie Tibbetts' disappearance or death associated with Wayne Cheney?
No.
And what about Mr. Pesca?
No.
In your investigation concerning Mollie Tibbetts' death involved the investigation of several people, is that right?
Yes.
And among the people brought up by Mr. Freeze during his cross-examination, did you discover any evidence associating them with Mollie Tibbetts' death or disappearance?
No.
Did you see any vehicle in the video, surveillance video, around the time and date that Mollie Tibbetts disappeared, other than the defendant's vehicle?
I didn't.
I'm sorry, Jeffrey, did I hear the answer?
I did not. I did not see any other vehicle.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Does the defense have any recross?
Did you ever find a murder weapon?
No.
And the body being found at 2478 460th, Mr. Pexa lived at 2410 460th, right?
Right.
After you found the body, did you think maybe to go knock on Mr. Pexa's door and follow up?
No.
That's all I have.
Mr. Claver, anything else for this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kibby. You may step down. You're excused. Can we clear the hall? We're gonna take a break. Members of the jury, we'll take a 10-minute recess at this time. Want to remind you of your admonition. Why don't you, just for clarification purposes, remain seated until Carrie tells you it's okay to leave, and that should be just momentarily. And again, leave your notebooks where they are. Thank you. State of Iowa may call its next witness.
Our next witness is Logan Collins.
And Mr. Collins, could you come over here and I'll swear you in, okay? Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay? Mr. Collins, you make your way over there and be seated if you would, please.
Let's watch your step getting in. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Collins, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Can you please state your name?
Logan Collins.
And where do you live, Mr. Collins?
Currently,
Yes.
I live at 214 2nd Street, Harwick, Iowa, 52232.
Okay. How long have you lived in Hartwick?
I just moved in there 2 months ago.
All right. Are you employed?
Yes.
Where do you work?
I work at Ashley Clean for furniture cleaning out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Okay. Do you also have training as a mechanic?
Yes.
What type of training is that?
Diesel technician.
Okay. How old are you?
I am 27.
Are you married?
I am not.
All right. Do you have any children?
No children.
All right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Harwick as a kid. From 4th grade, we moved to Tipton in Cedar County, and that's where I graduated.
All right. Did you eventually end up with a house in Brooklyn?
Yes, just right after 2012.
Okay. Tell us about that. When did you move in to Brooklyn and with who?
I moved into Brooklyn in 2012, the summer. At the current time, my uncle, Robert Collins, lived there.
What's the address of that house?
616 East Des Moines Street, Brooklyn, Iowa.
All right. And did you live there continuously from 2012 until you moved back to Hartwick?
Correct.
All right. So when would you have moved out of 616 East Des Moines?
I moved out 2019.
Okay. Now, I want to direct your attention, Mr. Collins, back to July of 2018. Were you residing at 616 East Des Moines Street in Brooklyn, Iowa?
Yes.
All right. Were you living there with anyone else at that particular time?
At the time, I was living with my girlfriend that was at the time.
All right. Anybody else?
Yes, it'd be my younger sibling, Elizabeth.
And were you working anywhere in July of 2018?
Yes.
Where was that?
I work for Ovation Network. They're located out of Cedar Rapids.
What is Ovation Network?
Ovation Network installs Wi-Fi for hotel, commercial, residential, and security cameras.
Okay. So you were familiar with security cameras based upon your employment, is that right?
Correct.
All right. Did you have a set of security cameras or a surveillance system at your home at 616 East Des Moines in Brooklyn?
Yes, I did.
When did you install that particular system?
I don't remember the exact month. I believe I purchased it in May.
Did you install it yourself?
Yes, I did.
And did you install it prior to July of 2018?
Yes.
As far as you know, was it operational that entire time?
Yes.
Were there times where you would view your surveillance camera?
About once a week.
Okay. And just tell the jury, generally speaking, where the cameras were located on your home.
I had 4 cameras that were located on a detached garage off of the house.
And generally speaking, did you have one that pointed to the southeast?
Yes.
And would that be towards the Boundary Street or towards Boundary Street in Brooklyn?
Yes.
All right. And where were the other 3 cameras?
One was pointing directly north. I had another one pointing northeast. I had another one pointing east, and then another one was. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll help you. So you had a camera pointed to the southeast, correct?
Yes.
Did you have one pointed to the northeast, you told us?
Yes.
Then one pointed directly north?
Yes.
Okay, and was there also one pointed directly south?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did the southeast cameras and the south cameras both view East Des Moines Street.
Yes.
All right. The camera that pointed to the northeast, generally what streets would it have captured?
It would have captured east and middle.
Middle is an east-west street in Brooklyn,
Yes.
and east is a north-south street directly adjacent to your property.
Yes.
Is east paved? Do you remember? It appears gravel on the video.
It is gravel. It's paced about 20 feet and then it goes into gravel.
Okay. Okay, in August of 2018, were you contacted by law enforcement concerning access to your cameras and recordings that you've just described?
Yes.
All right, and do you recall what date that was?
I do not remember the date.
All right, but mid-August, would that sound correct?
Yes.
All right. Did, by the way, not only did you have surveillance cameras that were mounted on the house, did you also have the system located somewhere in your residence?
Yes. The DVR was mounted in the garage.
Okay. So, how did law enforcement get a hold of you, Mr. Collins?
I actually contacted a deputy sheriff shortly after Mollie went missing, and he came and took some surveillance.
Okay. So did you also meet with a DCI agent on another occasion?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did between the two of those law enforcement officers, did they collect all of the information from your surveillance system?
Yes, they did.
Would that have included anything your cameras would have captured really between mid-August and several months prior?
Yes.
Do you remember, did law enforcement come over 2 different times?
Yes, they did.
Okay. So whenever they came over, were you cooperative?
Yes, I was.
Did you show them the location where your equipment was located?
Yes.
And did you willingly allow them to download the footage?
Yes.
Do you know how they got the footage off of your DVR?
Yes, a thumb drive.
At one point, did law enforcement actually seize the entire system?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And was that with your cooperation?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Collins, let me show you a couple pictures before we move on, actually. Okay, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as exhibit number 4. You've seen this before, correct?
Yes.
Oops. This is a satellite or map of Brooklyn. Would you agree with me?
Yes.
All right, I've got a cursor here and I've got a label that says Collins Residence. Does that appear to be your residence?
Yes, it is.
I know it's rather small here on the map, but there appear to be 3 buildings associated with your residence. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us what those are. What's the furthest one to the north?
That would be the garage.
Okay, and then the middle building is what?
That is the house.
Okay. And then the surveillance cameras that you mentioned are on the northernmost building. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And generally, would you have had a camera, I'm going to show you with the cursor, that would have pointed in this general direction to the southeast towards boundary?
Yes.
All right. And then the northeast camera would be generally to this direction where the cursor is at?
Correct.
All right, this street here that I've got the cursor on, what street is that?
That is Middle Street.
All right, and then the street here that's partially gravel, what is that street?
East.
I'm going to show you, hopefully. What's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 5. Is this area, where is this area in relation to Brooklyn? What direction?
That is northeast of my residence.
Okay. And generally speaking, this would be north, I'm sorry, north or east?
Yes.
Okay. Is this your residence here that we were just talking about here on the left side?
Correct. Yes.
Are you really familiar with any of this area out here, Mr. Collins, on 385th?
I am not.
Not somewhere you frequented?
No.
So, Mr. Collins, I want to show you some photos that have already been admitted. Make sure I get the right one. Without regard to the content of this photo, Exhibit 15, which has already been admitted, is this which, let me back up, which direction does this camera face?
That is facing southeast.
Okay, does this capture the area where Boundary Street would be?
Yes.
Okay, there's a bush that's here in the way, correct, that obstructs the view?
Yes.
And is this area where I have the cursor generally where Boundary Street would be located?
Yes, it is.
Exhibit 17, which that's previously been admitted, that's on the screen. Generally, which direction would this photo be facing?
That'd be facing northeast.
Who is this person?
That is me.
Okay. And these outbuildings that are here, do those belong to you?
No.
Okay. This road here where the cursor is that, what street is that?
That is east.
And this area out here, where the cursor is what?
That is Middle Street.
And lastly, here's Exhibit 21 that is on the screen. Is this which camera is this that we're looking at? What view?
That one is facing south.
And this street that is here, where the cursor is, what's the name of that street?
East Des Moines Street.
And just to be clear, we're going to go back to Exhibit 15. This is the southeastern facing camera, is that right?
Yes.
And this street where the cursor is at, which street is that?
East Des Moines Street.
Okay. So essentially, if you're facing south, you just turn a little to the left, and this is the view, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Collins, did you know Mollie Tibbetts?
I did not.
Never met her?
Just met her when she jogged past.
Okay. Just saw her?
Yes.
Okay. And did you know, or did you learn of her disappearance in the local media?
I did learn.
I'm not asking what you heard. I'm just
Yes.
asking, did you learn about it?
Yes.
All right. And then is that why you were cooperative with law enforcement?
Yes.
Anything you could do to help?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Defense may cross-examine.
Mr. Collins, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, when these videos were provided to law enforcement in August, had you reviewed them prior to that date?
I did not.
Some of these videos, I see that you were outside in the videos around the same time that the pictures were shown to you, okay?
Yes.
Did you notice anything unusual that night?
I did not.
Okay. How long did you live in a small town like Brooklyn?
Just from 2012 to when I recently moved.
Okay. Is this better?
Yes.
Thanks. You grew up in Hartwick. That's even a smaller town, right?
Yes.
And you graduated from Tipton, which is a pretty small town too.
Correct.
I grew up in a small town, and people take notice of people driving around, don't they?
Yeah, that's pretty common.
So if someone's driving around 3 or 4 times around the block, that's something people in small towns take notice of, right?
Yes.
You didn't take notice of anything unusual that day?
No, that's in a small town. Usually people drive up and down the streets all the time.
Okay. You didn't notice a black Malibu?
At the time, I did not notice it.
Okay. So on July 18th, nothing unusual jogged your memory, or at least caught your eye, right?
Nothing.
Now, when law enforcement came and wanted to review your surveillance camera video, tell me, how long does your surveillance camera video record?
Up to 30 days.
So you have 30 days of footage on that recorder, right?
Yes.
Did you give them all 30 days of footage?
Yes.
So they had a chance to look and see if this black Malibu is on that footage for a full 30 days, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone from law enforcement ask you to go back through and identify anything unusual on that footage?
Not the time, no.
Okay. At any point?
No.
That's all I have.
State have anything else for this witness?
Just, I guess, one other thing. Whenever we look back at actually, Judge, no, I don't have any anything further. Thank you very much.
Mr. Collins, thank you for being here. You're excused.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Derek Riessen from
And
DCI.
the state may call him. I'll swear you in if you can get your raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and be seated over here if you would, please.
Ready? Here, speak up.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Agent Riessen, can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Derek Riessen,
How do you spell your last name?
Riessen.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation through the state of Iowa
And how long have you been a DCI agent?
since 1995.
And what's your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree from Mount Mercy College in Cedar Rapids. No advanced degrees, bachelor's.
And other than DCI, do you have other law enforcement experience?
No, I've been with the Department of Public Safety, the state of Iowa, my entire career.
What's been the history of your assignments then with the Department of Public Safety?
In 1995 to 1998, I served in our gaming division, so gaming enforcement officer. In 1998, I was promoted to an agent within the gaming division. I served there until 2007, where I joined our Division of Intelligence, and in 2010, I joined the Major Crime Unit within the Division of Criminal Investigation.
Okay, describe that for us if you would, Agent Riessen, whenever you say that you're involved in a major crime unit. How is that divided among the state?
Within the state of Iowa, we have 4 zones of offices through the major crime unit. Northeast, southeast, central Iowa, and then western Iowa is a rough breakdown. In this area, we're considered zone 4 is the office I'm out of.
And where is that located generally within southeast Iowa?
Our zone is comprised from Jackson County to the north to the Missouri border and to the west over Poweshiek, Tama County area.
And there are field offices within that zone?
There are Mount Pleasant, Stockton, and Cedar Rapids.
And which field office are you associated with?
Stockton.
What are the duties of the major crime unit?
We are an assist-based agency, so when jurisdictions need our assistance with crimes or situations that they're not used to or haven't looked at in a long time, we will come in and assist them in any way they need.
Typically, do agents assigned to the major crime unit work death cases,
Yes,
including homicides?
correct.
And prior to this particular case, have you worked other death cases?
Yes,
Do you know how many you've worked in the course of your career?
more than 100, possibly a few hundred.
All right, Agent Riessen, I want to direct your attention back to July of 2018. Were you assigned to work the investigation into the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
I was.
And were you the case agent?
No, I was not.
Okay, tell the jury what a case agent is.
A case agent is someone who kind of, if you want to think of it as a case manager, who helps take in information, assign leads, someone to be kind of the repository for all the information that comes in an effort so things stay streamlined and the things that need to be addressed are addressed.
Okay. Have you served as a case agent in other death investigations?
I have.
Who was the case agent assigned to the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
Agent Trent Villada.
And does he work in the Stockton office with you?
He does not. He's out of our Cedar Rapids office.
Specifically, what date did you become involved in this case?
July 26th.
And what was your role in the investigation on July 26th and after?
Initially, it was to come in and conduct interviews, neighborhood canvass, friends of Mollie Tibbetts. Anything that came up that was assigned is what I would do.
Okay. Who made those assignments to you?
Agent Villada, I'm sorry.
Generally speaking, whenever you were in Poweshiek County working on the Mollie Tibbetts case, where were you housed?
For the initial part, we were in Brooklyn at their fire station is where we worked out of. And then later on in the investigation, we transferred down to the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office, which is in Montezuma.
Okay, and during the course of your involvement in the investigation, did you have assistance from other law enforcement agencies?
Yes, we did.
Both federal and state?
Federal, state, local, county, yes.
What assistance would you have had from the federal government?
Federal government, I recall them having evidence response teams to look at different areas, other agents to help with leads and run things out as well. So they provided anything that was needed.
All right, and then other local agencies would have assisted?
Correct. The Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office was very involved in the case.
Were there other than state agencies that were involved that provided law enforcement assistance?
Yes, there was.
Okay. As part of your assignment in this case, were you tasked with locating surveillance cameras within the city of Brooklyn?
Yes, I was.
What was the purpose of that task?
The purpose of the task was to find any surveillance or any camera view or angle so that we could better establish a timeline for Mollie and her disappearance.
Okay, and did that take some time to go through everyone in Brooklyn?
Absolutely.
All right, even though it's a small town, right?
Yes.
Still a lot of houses and a lot of outbuildings to check for surveillance cameras, would you agree?
I would agree.
All right, were people generally cooperative?
Very.
All right, and did you and other investigators create a map with tags of the locations that you would have checked, as well as locations that you would have needed to check?
There was within our meeting room, or war room is what we call it, there was a large Google map style. It was just a large, bigger than a poster size, that was up on the wall, which encompassed the city of Brooklyn. And within that, there would be stickers on each residence as to if they've been spoken to, check for cameras, if there needs to be follow-up, or it's been completed.
I'm going to show you one of those maps, which is State's Exhibit number 9. Do you see that?
I do.
Is that one of the maps that you're referring to?
Yes.
All right, and there are both, there's red flags that are on here as well as yellow flags, correct?
Correct.
The red flags indicate a place has been checked.
Correct.
Yellow flags would indicate you still needed to check that.
Need follow-up.
All right, if you can look closely at that.
Yes.
Prior to going out to Logan Collins's residence at 616 East Des Moines, there's a yellow flag that is near his house. Is that right?
That is correct.
So this map would have been utilized by law enforcement?
Correct.
And what would that indicate to you, looking at it in its present condition?
That would need follow-up.
All right. And is that one of the things that you did follow up on?
Correct.
Did you go, I'm sorry, I'll let you switch. Good. All right. Did you and other officers, you indicated that you did follow up with the Logan Collins residence at 616 East Des Moines Street in Brooklyn?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So how many different occasions, if you know, did law enforcement go to the Logan Collins residence?
I'm not sure of an exact number. I know I personally was there at least twice. I know law enforcement had been there previously.
Okay. Was there another officer that assisted in collecting the surveillance cameras?
Well, on my 2 occasions when I went there, my initial travels to the Collins house, I was with Special Agent Matt George of the DCI. We went to that residence. Logan was not home at that time, so we got a number and left a message. When we went back to retrieve the actual DVR system, FBI agent Dave Warren was with me.
So let's back up just a bit.
Sure.
How did you reach out to Logan Collins at 616 East Des Moines Street?
Once we went there and Agent George and I viewed the area and saw the cameras on the exterior of the home, we wanted to make sure that we had those cameras since he wasn't at home. So we had the video. So I had called back to find out who the resident was of that residence and get a phone number to try and make contact. So called and left a message for Mr. Collins, which he returned.
Okay. Did you make arrangements to go to the Collins residence at 616 East Des Moines?
I did.
All right. Do you remember the date that you went there?
That was August 14th.
All right. What time of day would you have gone to his residence?
I believe he was getting off of work, so it would have been after 4:15 approximately, 4:30, somewhere in there in the afternoon.
Where did you meet with Mr. Collins?
I met with Mr. Collins outside of his garage, and then he took me inside of his detached garage, which is where he housed the hardware, the DVR, of that nature for the system.
All right, did he also show you the locations of the cameras?
He did, but they were very visible. They weren't covert. They were the kind that are hardwired onto the outside of the home.
Okay.
Or the garage.
Would you characterize Mr. Collins as cooperative?
Very.
How long did you spend at his house on the evening of August 14th?
He assisted, well, he downloaded the cameras, so I watched him do that. So at the conclusion of that, I would guess half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay, prior to him downloading the surveillance video for you, did you look at it on his system? Did you view it?
No, we just knew that we needed the video based on the locations of the cameras. So we provided a hard drive for him to download them onto.
Was he able to do that?
He was.
Any problems or issues in downloading the surveillance footage?
No.
Did you take it back to the fire department and view it?
Yes.
Did you do that right away?
Yes.
All right. On the evening of August 14th?
Correct.
All right. Before we get to the content of the video, Agent Riessen, I want to ask you, just backing up a bit, how long had you known, if you know, that the cameras and the footage on Logan Collins' residence needed to be checked?
That day, Agent George and I went out was the first time I had learned that there were cameras there that needed follow-up.
Okay. There was a yellow sticker on the map that we saw earlier.
Correct.
Is that why you went to that residence?
That's exactly right.
Okay. So after collecting the video, then describe for the jury what your process was in reviewing it.
When we returned back to the Brooklyn Fire Department, we divided the cameras since there was 4 angles. We had different people looking at different angles in hopes to see Mollie Tibbetts jogging once again to help solidify our timeline.
And did you know in general what time frame you were looking for a jogger or any other evidence for that matter?
Based on the case information at that point, we had people in town who had seen her jogging, but the person who saw her last, according to our timeline, was Christina Stewart at approximately 7:45 p.m. So based on her accounts from where she would have seen Mollie at, we backed that up to account for the time it would take to jog there. So I would say from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. is the time frame we were looking at.
At the time, Agent Riessen, did you know that there was a black Chevy Malibu associated at all with Mollie Tibbetts?
No.
Did you review the footage?
Yes.
Was there another agent that was assisting you directly?
Numerous. I mean, like I said, we split them into, we had 4 different agents or off deputies looking at things.
Okay, Agent George is who I was referring to.
Yes.
So yeah, was he helping?
Yes.
All right. I want you, if you could, at one point tell us or describe, did another agent or Agent George notice what appeared to be a jogger?
He did. We didn't notice anything while reviewing them on August 14th. On August 15th, I was reviewing the cameras. Specifically, one area that was kind of hard to see, but after looking and being around the town of Brooklyn to get to 385th, there was really only 2 areas where you could access that road by pavement. So the areas the common areas that would have went right past Mr. Logan's house, East Des Moines Street, we didn't find her there. So on the 15th, I spent considerable time looking at the area of Boundary and the end of East Des Moines, which is hard to see on the cameras. While I'm reviewing it, Agent George, he came up and he had asked me what I was looking at. As I'm reviewing the cameras, I show him what I'm looking for. I turned actually to say something to him, and he said, I think I saw something there. I thought he was kidding at first, but I went back on the cameras, and then sure enough, we saw what looked to be like a jogger going through that frame.
It's from a distance, is that right?
It is.
All right. Now, let's back up just a bit. So you started reviewing the surveillance video on August the 14th, correct? You quit for the evening?
Yes.
And then came back to it the next day on August the 15th?
Correct.
Was that also back at the firehouse in Brooklyn?
Yes.
All right, and that's where this happened with Agent George that you just described to us, is that right?
That is correct.
All right, and we'll look at that video here in just a moment, but did you go back then and look several times to see if you could notice anything at all that appeared to be a runner?
Yes, yes. I looked
Okay.
at it numerous times. I can say it was a runner. Has the appearance of a ponytail, but that was about it to me.
Okay. We're gonna look at that video. Where's the sheet? Make sure. Okay. Agent Riessen, I've got on the screen what is Exhibit 11. You can see that?
Yes.
The date and time stamp on this particular video is what?
July 18th, 2018 at 19:45 hours and 24 seconds, so 7:45 p.m. as according to the timestamp on the tape or video.
Did you take any steps to determine if the date and timestamp were accurate?
Yes, when I was at Mr. Collins' residence, I compared the time and date to my cell phone. The date was correct, but the system was 3 minutes slow comparing it to my cell phone.
Okay, comparing it to your cell phone, correct?
Correct, yes.
So this 3 minutes, would that be then 7:45, 7:48?
Yes, my cell phone would say 7:48
Okay.
according to this.
So that's just in comparison to your phone, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, this is difficult to see. Would you agree with me?
I would very much agree.
Okay, and if you look at my cursor, the what you and Agent George would have initially seen, would this have been the view you would have had?
Yes, that's Boundary Street down there at the end of East Des Moines. So the gray house you can see to the south, and then the white house is actually across the street of Boundary, so to the east of Boundary. So right along that white house is where you'll see a jogger.
And it goes by in a fraction of a second, is that right?
It does.
Okay. We're gonna play this, and then we have an enhanced version of that too, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna play the video at this time. Was that it?
That was it.
Okay. Play it again one more time. what Agent George identified to you. Is that correct?
That's correct. He said he saw something, and then that's when I brought the video back and then played it forward again.
All right. Let's look at State's Exhibit number 12. This is a photo, correct?
Yes.
The, so we have labeled on this photo, Exhibit 12, runner on boundary. Would you agree?
Yes.
And there's a black arrow pointing back to the back towards Boundary Street where my cursor is at. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that where the what appears to be a runner goes through?
Yes.
Obviously, looking at this, we can't identify this person positively off of this video, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And this street that here on the cursor, is that, what street is that?
East Des Moines.
And then this street that runs this direction of the cursor towards the left side of the photo is what?
East Street.
Okay. Now, we enhanced this portion of the video. Have you seen that?
I have.
All right. I'm gonna now play what's Exhibit 13, which is the enhanced video, okay?
Okay.
We can see it a little bit clearer there, is that correct?
Yes.
I'll play it again here in just a moment, but let's be clear. What appears to be someone running is in the area where my laser pointer is, near this gray house, is that right?
Yes.
All right. Does the runner appear from the side of this gray house and then disappear behind the bush that is here to the left?
Yes.
All right, we're going to look at it one more time. Agent Riessen, based upon yours and other law enforcement's view of what you believe to be a runner, caused you then to do what with the remainder of this video, or this surveillance video that you had seized?
Essentially, what we decided to do was to start logging everything we saw on the video. Vehicles, any pedestrians, anything in and around that area prior to 7:45 and also following 7:45 p.m. as shown on the time and date stamp.
Now, in doing that type of surveillance, generally describe for us did you see multiple other vehicles?
Yes.
Well, generally describe for us what it was that you observed in that effort in reviewing the video that you just described.
While reviewing it, what we did, like I said earlier, once again we took this, and after we had located the runner, we once again parceled it out to different agents and deputies to review, and each created like a written log of just notes on what they had seen. So what was seen was, once again, cars, a person walking their dog, I recall, but most of it was vehicles.
All right. And in looking at that vehicle, collectively putting your heads together, did you notice what appeared to be a black Chevy Malibu?
We did.
Why was it that this particular car, out of all the others that you would have seen, drew yours and other law enforcement agents' attention?
The big thing for me was when those 4 individuals who were reviewing tape gave me their logs, I created a spreadsheet just on Excel. And with time and date according to the timestamp, And after the runner went past at 7:45:33, the next 4 entries in that log, once I compiled it, were a black Chevy Malibu.
Is that what drew your attention?
Yes.
All right, and was it significant to you and other law enforcement officers that it was close in time to when you saw the jogger?
It was.
And tell us why.
It was significant just being in the area. So it was just someone we really felt we needed to identify, whoever the driver was of that vehicle, to see if they saw something, if they knew who Mollie was or passed them or whatever. We just wanted to know who was driving that vehicle.
Now, were there distinctive features of the black Chevy Malibu that drew your attention?
Yeah, some of the features on it that were distinctive as opposed to a standard Malibu. It had chrome side mirrors, so the outside of the mirror was chrome. The door handles to the vehicle were chrome, and then it appeared to have chrome mag rims on the vehicle as well.
And did you take any steps or efforts, or did others, to figure out if any of those features were standard on a black Chevy Malibu?
We did.
And what did you determine?
We determined that they were kind of a specialty item, or it could have been an aftermarket item as well.
What was the aftermarket item?
Would have been the mirrors.
Okay, the chromed handles.
I don't recall if those were aftermarket or could have been through the factory. I don't recall that.
All right, and then the rims that you noticed, would those have been factory or aftermarket, or do you know?
I don't know.
The only feature that stood out to you would have been the chrome mirrors.
Well, I mean, as opposed to other Malibus you see on the road, the chrome mirrors, the door handles, and the mag rims are what were distinctive to me when viewing it on video.
And actually, that's was evident on the surveillance video that you viewed, those particular features.
Yes, it was.
Okay. All right. So after you see, yeah, sure.
We need to take a break
Sure.
at this time. So, members of the jury, want to remind you of your admonition. We'll take a break here for 10 minutes. Leave your notebooks where they are, and Carrie will tell you when you can step out. Should be just momentarily. Thank you, everyone. And sir, you can step down.
And did you and other agents make efforts then to go through the surveillance video to identify the different locations this car was at around the time of 7:45
We did,
on July 18th of 2018?
correct.
Okay, were there other times during the surveillance video where that particular car that you just described appears?
Yes,
All right, tell us again, before we look at the first video clip, when was it that the jogger went through on the video? What was the time?
the timestamp was 7:45:33 or 19:45:33 on the timestamp.
And then when did you first see the black Malibu go through the video?
It would have been approximately 20 to 30 seconds later.
Okay, and which direction is it traveling?
It was going to be coming up East Des Moines Street, traveling west.
Okay. And have you reviewed that particular part of the video?
Yes,
All right. I have on the screen right now State's Exhibit 14. Is this a video clip?
it is.
All right. And would this be the first time that you would have seen the black Malibu that you described in relation to the runner that we've already viewed?
It is.
All right. We'll play State's Exhibit 14. By the way, before we play it, looking at the exhibit, directionally, where does the black Malibu appear first?
The black Malibu will come from the same direction as where the jogger came through, so down by the gray house, traveling toward the red and white truck.
Okay. We'll show the video. Okay, we'll look at it one more time. Agent Riessen, prior to coming in to trial, were we able to screenshot part of this video to get a better look at the black Malibu?
Yes,
And have you seen that photo?
yes.
We'll show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 15. Do you see that?
I do.
On the screen is Exhibit 15. First of all, before we zoom in, what is this that you notice on the black Malibu?
The mirrors being chrome, the door handles, the chrome rims were immediately identifiable to me.
That's a closer version of that photo, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, you can't identify the driver
No.
or the plate.
No.
All right. Okay, Agent Riessen, State's Exhibit 16 is now on the screen. Do you see that?
I do.
This is a video clip and shows us what direction again?
This would be to the north and east of the Collins residence.
And do you see that, what appears to be that same vehicle passing through this particular video?
Yes, we do.
All right, and that, the date and time stamp on this video is what?
It would be July 18th, 2018, 19:47 and 51 seconds.
So just shortly after the video that we viewed a minute ago.
Correct.
Do you agree?
Yes.
And where I have the laser pointer, is that where we see the black Malibu come through?
It is.
Okay, we'll play the video. State's Exhibit 16. This was a video that drew your attention.
It was?
It appears to be the same car.
Yes.
All right, we'll watch it a second time. Did you likewise, did we take a screenshot of this video to get a static view of the car?
Yes.
And this is State's Exhibit 17 that's on the screen.
It is.
All right. Where'd my laser pointer at? What is that?
That's what we believe to be a black Chevy Malibu.
Okay. In looking at this photo, I've enhanced it just a bit on the screen, State's Exhibit 17. Can you catch the chrome mirror? Do you see it?
Yes, I see it.
And it's located here, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Where I've got the laser pointer?
Yes.
Very good. And going in chronological order, then, did you see the Malibu yet another time pass through the surveillance cameras?
Yes, sir.
And what street was that on?
I believe that would have been back on East Des Moines.
Okay. And at what time do we have on the date and time stamp for this particular video, which is State's Exhibit 18?
The timestamp on the video is 1948 hours and 44 seconds.
Okay. We'll watch that video. Okay, Agent Riessen, I'm going to play it a second time, but just for purposes of the record, generally, where do we see the black Malibu come from on the video, and what direction is it traveling?
It's traveling from west to east, so it appears near the red and white truck and travels down East Des Moines Street toward Boundary.
And we'll watch it a second time. Were we able to likewise take a screenshot of that vehicle that we just saw in this particular video?
We were.
All right, and what's on the screen is State's Exhibit 19. Do you see the black Malibu?
I do.
This is the black Malibu?
Yes, sir.
Do you see those same features that you just described?
I do, specifically the door handles and the chrome mirror.
We'll take a closer look at that. Do you see the wheels, the mirror, and the handles that you described?
I do.
All right, and okay. What was the last time that you observed this particular vehicle pass through the surveillance cameras at 616 East Des Moines?
It would have been at 8:07, approximately 8:07 p.m., 8:06 and 55 seconds, I believe. It would have been traveling from west to east on East Des Moines Street.
The same direction that we have here in State's Exhibit 19, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. On any of these video surveillance cameras, can you identify the driver or the plate?
No, sir.
Is there any enhancement that you're aware of that could have provided that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. State's Exhibit 20 is on the screen. It's the date and time stamp is July 18th of 2018 at 20:06 and some seconds.
55 seconds, yes.
And 20:06 is in normal time is what?
8:06
Okay, and,
p.m.
all right, we'll play Exhibit 20. Do you see that same Chevy Malibu pass through on East Des Moines Street?
I do.
Headed to the east?
Correct.
This would again be headed towards the area where we had seen the jogger about 20 minutes before.
Yes, it would.
All right, we'll look at State's Exhibit 20 one additional time. How would you describe the rate of speed of that car in comparison to the other videos that we've observed?
In my opinion, on this trip through, it seemed to be going faster to me.
All right, and State's Exhibit 21 is on the screen. What is this that we're looking at, State's Exhibit 21?
The black Chevy Malibu in a still photo.
And the same spoked wheels that we see in the other on the other vehicles in the other videos are
Yep.
here?
Same mag wheels, same chrome door handles, and the chrome side mirrors.
This is just a blown up version of what we have on the screen, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I want to go back to an overall exhibit here. Exhibit 4 is now on the screen. Do you see that?
I do.
We have marked on the map, we mark it as a Tibbetts sighting. This is the area of the runner, is that correct?
That is correct.
This is Boundary Street that I have my cursor on, is that right?
Yep,
And East Des Moines runs east and west, is that true?
that is true.
Up here, what street is that?
That's 385th.
And the surveillance camera from the Collins residence on the sighting would have been generally from his residence to the southeast.
That is accurate.
Okay. All right, Agent Riessen, after reviewing each of those videos and the stills and collecting that information, did you relay that to other law enforcement?
I did.
Okay, and I know we've looked at 4 different clips here of the Chevy Malibu from 3 different camera angles. Were there other camera angles that showed the same car?
Yes.
Okay, there's an additional camera, correct, that faced more to the north?
Yes.
Could you see the same vehicle on that camera as well?
Yes, you could.
And if it faced north, it would catch it in the generally the same direction that we had whenever the camera was faced northeast. Is that right?
That is accurate.
Okay. Did you see the black Chevy Malibu pass through the surveillance area after 8:07 and 55 seconds?
No, sir.
Now, I know we've looked at the Chevy Malibu. Were there other vehicles that were on the video?
Yes, there were.
All right, did you pass that same information along to law enforcement? Any other vehicle that would have drawn your attention?
We passed along the spreadsheet that was created, all the vehicles that were on there. There were some people, for instance, Christina Stewart was going to her parents, so we're able to identify who was in that car, that kind of thing.
Okay. So Christina Stewart's van appears on the video traveling on East Des Moines Street?
It does.
At about what time do you recall?
7:53, 1953 on the timestamp.
Okay. And you knew that was her vehicle?
Yes, later, once we were gaining information and looking into people who live on the road, travel that road, that sort of thing.
All right. Now, as a law enforcement officer, as generally in investigations, do you develop what are called leads?
Certainly.
What's a lead?
It's a piece of information that needs to be followed up on to see if it leads anywhere toward a resolution of an investigation.
Okay. Some leads are dead ends.
Sure.
Some leads are more fruitful. Would that be true?
That's true.
But you follow those leads as a law enforcement officer, as do other law enforcement officers. Is that correct?
Yes.
This information that you had on the video concerning the black Malibu, would that have been a significant lead to law enforcement?
Yes, in my opinion it was.
All right. And particularly with regard to this car and the timing of when you see the runner, why is that?
The vehicle passed through numerous times after seeing the runner pass through the video. Just from the time the runner went through until 8:07, there was 14 vehicles seen on those cameras. 6 of those were the Malibu.
Okay. All right. All right, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Defense may cross-examine.
Thank you. Agent Riessen, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. The spreadsheet you made also allowed agents to perhaps track down some of the registered owners of the vehicles, right?
That was the goal, yes.
Yeah, and that's where you got Christina Stewart, correct?
Yes, sir.
There was also a Brian Kriegel. You recall that name?
I remember seeing it on there, yes.
And what was the relevance of Mr. Kriegel?
If I recall, he was there was a new home being developed out there that he had a connection to.
And he lived on 385th, right?
Correct.
There's also an individual who is suspected of being on that video at 7:31 p.m. named Jackson Eichhorn. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
What's the significance of Jackson Eichhorn?
Jackson Eichhorn was a high school friend and associate, acquaintance of Mollie Tibbetts. She was a few years older than him.
Okay. And you saw that him or a vehicle suspected to be his following the same route that the jogger was on, correct?
It was preceding the jogger.
Okay, but it was the same route.
Sure.
And that pickup came to that intersection where the jogger also came, and then you never saw it again, right?
Correct.
And then it was suspected that that pickup, the dark pickup, took a right and then went into the cemetery. Is that right?
We couldn't see that on video.
Okay, that was your suspicion.
It was a suspicion.
Okay. And that cemetery is basically right at the end of East Des Moines Street, right?
Yes, East Des Moines will carry right into the cemetery.
Did you ever go out to the cemetery?
I did.
And what was the purpose of you going to the cemetery?
We were just trying to get a better lay of the land, seeing what could be seen from the cemetery out to 385th. We found that it's kind of there's a slight upgrade, toward the road. It's hard to see things during that time of year with corn growth and things.
But you can see 385th from the cemetery.
You couldn't see it well because of the corn in the field.
Sure.
So you could see over top of it, you could see the houses to the north side of the road.
Okay, very well. Now, the first time, or strike that, the jogger is seen running north at 7:45, which would be 7:48, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and we can't identify that jogger. We suspect, though, it's Mollie Tibbetts.
that's what we suspected, yes.
And Mr. Brown showed you the videos. The first video that we saw, Exhibit 14, shows the Malibu driving westbound, right?
Yes,
And that's away from the direction of the jogger, correct?
correct.
And the second video, again, shows the black Malibu, again, driving westbound, away from the direction of the jogger, right?
Correct.
And the final video, where you said the Malibu is driving at a higher rate of speed, that's at 8:10 p.m.
8:07 p.m.
But the true
Oh.
time is 8:10, right?
Yes, sir.
And what is your knowledge of the time where we believe Mollie Tibbetts was finally abducted?
I don't have that. I don't have that information.
Okay. If I told you 8:20, would that jog your memory?
That would make sense to me.
Okay. So we had the Malibu going by at 8:10 and Mollie Tibbetts being abducted at 8:20.
Well, speaking about this, I was 8:20 to 8:30 range is what I would say.
Okay. And is it your understanding that she was abducted near the intersection of 385th Avenue and 200th Street?
If that's the gravel road, the 200th Street,
Okay, let's assume it is.
that's what the assumption is.
Did you travel out to that location?
I had been out to that location.
How far is that location from the city limits of Brooklyn?
I'm not sure exactly where the city limits stop, but roughly from where the jogger was seen to that location is a little over 2 miles.
Okay. Now, who put the yellow dot on your map?
I'm not sure.
And that yellow dot was there because someone had identified surveillance cameras on Mr. Logan's home?
Yes,
Do you know when those surveillance cameras were identified?
I do not.
Did you only search the surveillance video for that 1 hour period on the 18th?
That's where we started on the 18th, was working off of our timeline that we were basing the investigation from.
How much footage has law enforcement reviewed off of Logan Collins' cameras?
At the time I can speak to, since then I can't speak to that.
Did Mr. Collins indicate to you how much footage was saved on his system?
I believe he had a 1 terabyte DVR, so it would be significant, 30 days or so.
Okay. So if you downloaded the information on what, August 14th?
Yes,
You'd have 30 days back from August 14th, right?
correct.
That put it somewhere in the vicinity of July 16th. That sound about right?
Yes,
So we would have at least a couple days of footage that law enforcement could review to see if anybody was stalking or trying to see Mollie on those 2 days from that camera, right?
what we chose to do was work off of our timeline. So we started at the knowns versus unknowns and kind of worked that direction.
Okay. But the point is, once you had the 18th nailed down, law enforcement did no more work on reviewing that footage, right?
Did no more work from working out from that time period.
Correct.
Yes, we were identifying the cars, vehicles, and people closest to when we saw the jogger.
Okay. So the point is, you never saw the black Malibu other than that one small time period.
I did not review any other time.
All right. Your investigation over and above the video review, involved trying to speak to Wayne Cheney?
I did.
And you asked Wayne Cheney to give a statement,
I did.
and he was not cooperative, was he?
He was for a while. We were able to sit down and speak for a while, but he did leave the interview.
Okay. Now, were you also involved, or strike that, what was the desire to speak to Mr. Cheney arise from?
Just case facts that had come up throughout the investigation.
And what were those case facts?
A lot of it was just statements he had made, path of, once again, according to our timeline and locations, path of travel could have been out by his property.
As I understand it, the investigation was focusing on the southeast corner of Poweshiek County, right?
Correct.
And that's where Mr. Cheney lived, right?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Cheney had a history of violence with women, right?
I don't specifically recall that.
If there were a tip that came in involving an individual who had a history of violence with women in that area, in your training, education, and experience, would that be somebody that law enforcement would want to talk to?
Absolutely.
If there were an individual in that area of the county who had a history of sexual deviance or sexual violence toward women, would that be an individual law enforcement would want to talk to?
Yes.
Did the name Ron Pexa ever come up in your investigation?
Not in my portion, no.
Were you involved at all in a canvass of the 2400 block or the 2300 block of 460th Avenue?
No, sir.
Were you at all involved with responding to the scene where Ms. Tibbetts' body was recovered?
I was not.
In your training, education, and experience, once a body is recovered, like in a location where Ms. Tibbetts' body was recovered, would you want to interview persons in the area to see if they had seen or known anything out of the ordinary?
Certainly.
Like the next door neighbor, perhaps?
Yes.
If someone, the next house down the road within a quarter or half a mile from where her body was discovered, would you not want to interview that person?
That would be something you get to in the sense that obviously the location of the deceased becomes the primary. And so once again, kind of like the video, you start there and work out.
Okay. And if that person who lived close to the location of the body had a history of violence against women or sexual deviance or sexual violence against women, you'd want to talk to that person again, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Now, that's all I have.
State have any redirect?
No, Your Honor, no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You're excused. You may step down. Counsel, could I get you to approach, please? Members of the jury, at this time, we'll break for lunch. We'll be in recess until 1:15. Please remember your admonition. Make sure you're not discussing the case with anyone, doing any type of independent research, or having any media exposure. Leave your notebooks where they are, and we'll be back ready to go at 1:15. Thank you.